Hello, I am Rebecca Snow, owner and mentor and CNS supervisor with the Nutrition Herbal Collective. So happy to be here with you. I'll bet a little late, my apologies. So we are gearing up for our new program launch, the Prosperous Practitioner, which is starting August 15th. So you have 4 more days and a few hours to register for that. And along with the theme of launching a successful practice and building a business, I wanted to talk about niching. I did not take a typical path. I didn't intentionally start my business and say, this is the niche that I want to have. I took a slightly different path. I did networking right out of the gate. I ended up partnering with a doctor and working with a medical practice called Optimal Health Physicians. But what I want to tell you is how I came about. I did end up with a niche. I ended up with 3 niches actually. But throughout the 20 years that I've been practicing, I really have stayed a bit of a generalist, mostly due to the fact that I mentor other practitioners and I want to keep my hand in many pots. I don't want to lose my edge in any area. Like I want to stay up to date on what's happening in the world of autoimmunity and cancer and digestive wellness, etc. So there's a certain reason that I haven't just stuck only with a niche. I don't recommend being a generalist to interns. I actually think it's a bad idea for a number of reasons. Most notably because there's such a huge learning curve in the beginning of your practice. I mean, there's so much to figure out. You might be starting your very first business. Maybe you've never run a business before, so you have to learn how all the ins and outs of bookkeeping and taxes and starting a business and the legalities of that, as well as marketing yourself and bringing in income. So there's so much to learn. The other reason, and that's just the business end of things, then there's so much to learn just with running a clinic, client management, setting boundaries and expectations, pricing, actually what you're delivering, charting and documenting your cases and creating realistic expectations as far as your recommendations. So it's just a huge learning curve in the beginning. So creating a niche not only helps you narrow down who you're speaking to and actually have an audience you're speaking to, it also cuts down your workload because you don't need to research every single condition and you don't have to become an expert in every area, which is impossible. You can really dive into one niche, and it doesn't mean you're not going to cover other areas. So let's say you choose to work with pregnancy. You're going to have many topics come up within that niche, from cardiometabolic disease, gestational diabetes, fertility, body image issues. There's lots of things that are going to come up within that niche. So everything's interrelated. So just by choosing a niche, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to work with the gamut. And Sunny will talk about that more in our Prosperous Practitioner course. I'll tell you my story. As I said, I didn't start off saying, this is what I want to do. I really just hung a shingle up. I started networking and people started making appointments. And I ended up in a clinic that specialized in Lyme disease. And when I went to school, Lyme disease really wasn't even covered. The cool thing though, my education at MUIH did teach me how to critically think, how to research, and how to solve problems using the skills that I had gained. So I was able to apply what I had learned to a condition I was never trained in to really navigate how to work with that condition. When I started working with Lyme disease, it was so I mean, that was back in 2004, 2005. People were much less literate in the condition. People didn't really understand that it could be a chronic condition. And there was no roadmap in the functional medicine world that I could find that, you know, was really well laid out. So I really had to just figure it out. And working with the medical doctors I was working with, I mean, Stephen Buhner had published his first book. That was super helpful. There was beginning to be research on herbs and just understanding like the mechanism of how the illness manifested. You could apply knowledge to that. And also I learned from my patients. So I think whenever you niche in something, you learn so much from the people you see, because they're the ones on the front lines dealing with the illness. That was my first niche. My second niche developed in 2013. I was working at MUIH, both as director of the nutrition program, and I was also maintaining a private practice, which I don't recommend, chairing a department and having a private practice at the same time. My private practice was very small at that time. It was just like a half day a week. But clinical has always been my first love. So even when I worked in academics, I wanted to keep my hand in the clinical pot. But I had a client come into my practice at that time. She'd been to 30 plus doctors. People had turned her away from their practices because they could not help her. And she said she actually had a dream about me before she met me. So when she saw me in the waiting room, she knew that I was Rebecca because she'd had a dream. So, you know, we were clearly meant to work together. And she had mast cell issues. And we, you know, one of my first recommendations for her was like bone broth, which was one of the worst recommendations you could ever make to somebody with mast cell issues. And of course she flared from that. So it was a huge learning experience for me and for her. And fast forward 9 years, she's so much better. She works with a functional medicine doctor. She works with me. You know, it's really a lot of maintenance support and coaching. But that caused me, you know, through that one client, she asked me to speak to her support group. Mast cell was not on the radar back then as much as it is now. I mean, Dr. Afrin, really like the father of mast cell activation syndrome and who created the diagnostic criteria. I mean, he was really publishing and kind of coming out with that information right around that time. So it was still an emerging field. So again, just like Lyme disease, there was no roadmap. I had no training. I had to learn from other experts such as Dr. Theoharides, you know, Dr. Afrin, and other nutritionists who were, you know, working with that, like Allison Vickery, Dr. Janeja Vickerstaff, like those were some of the people that I learned from. And since then, you know, that cascaded to seeing other people with that illness. And the last niche that I work with is 12-step food programs. I actually did a webinar on the topic for the ANA you can find on their website, but that started also with clients who came to see me. So actually 2 of my longest clients who I've been seeing for almost 20 years, one in 2003, one in 2004, both of them are in food program, and they're my longest term clients that I've been working with them and their families over that period of time. And, you know, I'm familiar with 12-step programs from my own personal life. So when the first person came into my practice from a 12-step food program, I said, wow, what's this? And I learned from my patients, what is this all about? How does it serve you? How has it transformed your life? I was skeptical at first, but, you know, and I think as I talk about in my ANA webinar, like we have to differentiate, like what's the best path for each client, and, you know, what are they personally dealing with and what serves them. But it's been really wonderful to work with individuals who are in 12-step food programs because they're really seeking out a better way for themselves. They're seeking out social, spiritual, physical health through their work in that area. And I have found working with folks that are in 12-step food programs, they're really highly motivated. They're thirsty for knowledge. They really love getting a nutritionist input because they're mostly working with lay people in their 12-step food program, and they need that professional advice to really feel solid about what they're eating, what they're putting into their body, that they're getting their nutritional needs met. So that's been a wonderful niche to work with. So really what it comes down to is that all the areas that I specialize in have kind of just shown up for me. I didn't choose them. If I had to do it all over again, would I change it? I don't know. I mean, if right now you said I could work with any niche I wanted to, I probably would redesign my practice and choose something that I want to learn about right now. But I love the path that I've been on. And I think that really the takeaway from this is that you suit up and show up. And, you know, it's like that quote, the Frederick, I don't know how to say his last name, Buechner quote, "The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." And that's basically what I've done. It's I'm offering a service, and when I find that there's a real meeting of minds, that I have something to offer, that there's a need in the world that isn't being met, as there was back in 2004 when I started with Lyme, or 2013 when I started with mast cell, then I'm offering something. So keep suiting up, showing up, see who comes to your practice. Maybe you want to work with pregnancy, but you end up seeing, men that lift weights, and that's just who wants to come see you. So, we have our intentions that we set out with, but we also have to just kind of see what shows up in our practice and keep moving forward. All right, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Definitely check out our new program, Prosperous Practitioner. We are enrolling in our mentorship program, and you can check that out, the Nutritional Herbal Collective. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.